So a week ago, I was thinking about this message, the next brave thing, and what that takes and why on earth do it. I mean, what are the fruits? What are the rewards? And it was Saturday evening, and I was in Atlanta trying to get my car wedged into a parking space and just kind of muttering to myself, saying, what am I doing? I'm not a city driver, and all this kind of worried, clenched up talk that I was doing. And out of the corner of my eye, my periphery, I see beauty in motion, fluid and free on the sidewalk, moving around, and it was my colleague, Reverend E.N. Hill. And I don't know who the minister pickers are here in this community, but I think you did okay. Because I started to think about, come on. As I was thinking about courage, I was thinking about what I've experienced over the last few months since arriving here, and I was thinking about those moments when I have witnessed Reverend E.N., my colleague, expressing and demonstrating what it is to be clear in righteous and prophetic anger for justice. And I've witnessed also Reverend E.N., my colleague, showing up with tears and open hearts and open hand in a moment of sorrow. And I've witnessed and experienced my colleague showing up at meetings where nobody's saying the thing that needs saying, and then here comes my colleague to say exactly that thing. And I thought, well, what am I doing talking about courage? Because I am sharing ministry with somebody who is a walking story of it, and what you get when you live like that kind of freedom that I saw out of my peripheral vision on the sidewalk, that I understand and appreciate and respect as the fruits of day after day after day choosing courage. And so I asked Reverend E.N. if he would share some words of some testimony about how life got to be like that. So here it comes.
Don't let them fool you, y'all. No, I am really grateful. When Reverend Jake invited me to share a testimonial on courage, the writer in me thought, great, easy, I've already got something written. But then I felt a nudge towards the next braver thing, which is to share something more personal and a little less polished, but deeply connected to this season in my life. It's a story about my mama. She be watching, so it's a gentle story. Y'all know that I've come to have a very beautiful relationship with my mother, but it has not always been like that. Some of you know that my mom is a retired correctional officer but she worked in the men's facility. That's how tough she's always been. And while working there, there were some incarcerated folks who no longer identified as men, even though the system insisted otherwise. And so years ago, my mom, my brother, and I were visiting one of her old coworkers, and they were swapping stories and laughing and talking shop. And then my mama used a word that I'm not gonna repeat, to describe one of the transgender folks who had been in their custody. At that point, I was not out to her as trans. And honestly, it was something that I was barely understanding about myself, but I knew that the moment I heard her say this word, something inside of me was offended and shut down. I excused myself from the group and I went into the guest room and I cried. I cried, and then I told myself I'm gonna just go to sleep and sleep it off, and then I'll be fine to drive us home in the morning. But morning came and I wasn't fine. And because I was the driver, I knew I couldn't get behind the wheel with this energy lodged in my spirit. And so imagine my mama's surprise when she came out to the car ready to go and found me already in the driver's seat, quiet, steady, and determined. I told her we weren't leaving until she apologized. She pushed back a little bit at first. She told me, I didn't mean any harm. I need an apology. She said, I thought that was what they were called. It wasn't a big deal. It was a big deal to me. And I needed her to know that. We went back and forth a little while, and she started crying. And I sat there, stone-faced, waiting. My brother, 10 years younger than me, bless his heart, encouraged my mama to really hear me in that moment. And finally, she did. She listened, and she apologized. Not a forced apology and not a performative one, but a real one. And that was the day that I learned that courage isn't always about the big heroic gestures that I had been practicing while in the military and all of that. Sometimes it's simply asking for the dignity you need and trusting that love will rise to meet you in that moment. I'm so grateful that it did. Thank you, Mom. I love you.
And on behalf of this community, thank you, Reverend Ian's mom. We love them. So I want to tell you about 5 words that changed my life on the topic today. 5 words that changed my life. But before I do that, I want to tell you about an old sweatshirt I had. When I was in my mid-20s on a trip to the beach once, I saw this yellow, no mustard hoodie. And what I loved about it was not just how perfect the color was, but that stitched onto the chest was a large navy blue halibut. I thought, that is the coolest article of clothing I've ever seen. Some of you, I know I'm in Atlanta, so some of you know that doesn't mean much coming from my fashion perspective, but for me, I thought it looked pretty good. So mid-20s, I got this sweatshirt. It became a familiar friend. I wore it here, there, and everywhere, out to marches, on hiking trips, social gatherings, all this kind of stuff. I loved that sweatshirt. And then came the moment in my early 40s when I came to a reunion of old college friends. And we were all gathering around, greeting each other, and here came the 5 words that caught my attention. And those 5 words were, "Hey, I know that sweatshirt." And I was called out by the universe. It was like the universe had opened the curtains on my life and shone a light on me. That I had been going through some old familiar choices and sort of rehearsing and reenacting things that I had decided years ago. Now, I will tell you that probably at that stage of my life, I was aware there were some changes that I needed to make, some truths I needed to tell, some decisions that I had to stop putting off, which for various reasons I had been avoiding. And so when I heard, "Hey, I know that old sweatshirt," from a friend, which was meant in love, not in judgment, it sort of woke me up as if the universe was saying, "You're not fooling anybody, playing your greatest hits on repeat. We see you," being the universe saying, "we see you there stuck in cruise control." Do you all have moments like this in your life where you're kind of like, "No"? Some people are like, "No, I'm awake and I'm fresh and I'm new every day." Okay, so I'm going to speak to the 75% of the rest of y'all. And those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, listen and learn, because we're struggling here, the rest of us. It could be these things that you learn to live with and then fall asleep to, as simple as like the drawer in the kitchen that you have to jiggle before it comes out, or that sagging mattress that you've had forever and you wake up with your stiff back. It could be that you've let your marriage, your primary relationships go stale, or your dating life follows a predictable pattern, safe in its predictability, or some pattern in your family, perhaps one that showed up at the Thanksgiving table that you've just gotten resigned to, that you believe will never change. So you laugh bitterly about it, perhaps to your cousins, and then shrug and show up again and again. And maybe you've built up such tolerance to the intolerable, such acceptance to the unacceptable, that you hardly ever notice what's wrong anymore, that you've been moving around the dimly lit room of your life until somebody comes in and flicks on the lamp and the actual condition of things is revealed. Think about it for yourself. I mean it this morning. When it comes to your health or relationships or your spiritual well-being or your heart or your finances or your friendship, the realms of whatever it is that matters to you, what would you say is the state of things this morning? Is it a 10 out of 10, no complaints, all good? And again, I know 25% of you are saying, yep. I just come here for the music and the coffee. The rest of us, though, may be living in some state of suspended animation, wishing things could be different, but having come to believe that they never will be. To what extent this morning, and in what realms of your life as you reflect, would you say that your life is a walking version of, hey, I know that sweatshirt, meaning a comfortable rehearsal of the patterns of the already known? You know your part, they know theirs. Everybody has silently agreed to leave well enough alone. Why rock the boat? Why borrow trouble? Why cause a fuss? I would suspect that to the extent that the quality of life I'm describing is familiar to you, it is not actually that a different life is impossible. I would suspect that it's only that somewhere deep inside you have made a calculation. That somewhere deep inside you have made a choice. It could be, and I'm only guessing here, speculating, that the prospect of doing something different, of saying something different, of negotiating for something different in your life and your dignity and how you move through this life brings up apprehension, perhaps well-earned fear. What if they won't like me? What if it's not safe? What if I can't do it? What if I look foolish? And what if I fall down? What if I lose what I already have and wind up empty-handed, 2 steps back from where I started out? I think these are real questions. I mean, these are real considerations, and how we sort and sift them is up to each of us alone. Each person in here, I think, is the boss of your own life. You get to decide whether and when and how to face up to whatever it is that you have been avoiding. You get to decide what you're going to do about it, if anything. But I would like to offer the thought that one sure thing you can bet on is this. If you keep doing whatever it is you've been doing, you're going to wind up getting whatever you've been getting. And maybe that's okay with you. Maybe you've grown enough for this lifetime. Maybe you've risked enough. Maybe you've gone as far as you want to go. All of that's up to you. Maybe you are just here for the coffee. I don't know. But if that's where you're at, I don't think you get to say you're struggling with it. I don't think you get to say you're working on it. If what you're really doing is treading water, I don't think you get to tell other people, at least credibly, that what you're doing is swimming. Because swimming is hard. And when we look around at people we know who are struggling, who are working on something, who are swimming and not treading water, we can see them. I mean, they're in motion. It's not easy. It's hard. Swimming is hard, and risking is hard. And doing the next brave thing, whatever it is that you brought this morning as a question or a dilemma or that pause button in your heart, that's going to be hard. And I don't think we get to the other shore, whatever that might mean for you, unless we make the decision deep in our own lives that we're going to swim. I don't think we get to float through life wearing our old familiar sweatshirts, telling our old stories, repeating old platitudes, and also get rewarded with what are actually the fruits of life, such as what I witnessed as I saw my colleague moving around free on the sidewalk last Saturday. If I'm going to be even more honest, I don't think our decision to float or tread water to play out patterns of the familiar leaves us then comfortably numb from here on. Sooner or later, at least in my life, those old tricks just stop working. Sooner or later, whatever we figured out as the behavioral or relational version of a comfortable old sweatshirt is going to fall apart at the seams. And maybe that's actually what you're up against this morning. Maybe you're not floating along comfortably. Maybe you're realizing the old tricks just aren't working like they did. So let me share a scrap of ancient wisdom that should come with a warning label. It's this saying: if you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring forth what is within you will destroy you. This line is from the Gospel of Thomas, which is a collection of mystical or Gnostic sayings recorded in the early church Christian communities and then buried in a clay jar for protection from oppressive forces, which ended up being over centuries. It wasn't until 1945 when two farmers, came looking for fertilizer and found this clay jar which contained within it what's become known as the Nag Hammadi Library, leather-bound collection of sayings from these desert mystic communities. And among that was the Gospel of Thomas, this collection of religious imagination from that time and that cultural context. And within the Gospel of Thomas is this line 70, saying 70. If you bring forth what is within you will save you. If you do not bring what is within you will destroy you. Across time and space, from the voices of these ancestors, I hear something that to me has the ring of truth. In this line, I don't hear blame. I don't hear shame. I don't hear moralistic finger wagging. In fact, in this line, as I reflect on it, what I hear are two messages that I see as conducive to change. The first message I hear in this line, or actually underneath this line, is that treading water is not an option. What I hear in this line is that playing our old hits, wearing our old sweatshirts, choosing comfort over progress, or convention over conscience, is not a net neutral, but instead, over time, has a corrosive effect. In my marriage, in my friendships, in my vocation, my health, and my spiritual life, if I am robotically recycling what I already know and not bringing forth what is fresh and alive and prophetic within me, then this ancient scrap of wisdom is suggesting that my failure to bring all of that forth over time is going to do me in. If you don't like that idea, don't blame me, blame those ancient mystics who spent so long out there in the desert thinking about things. But that's only the first thing that I hear in this saying from the Gospel of Thomas, the idea that not bringing forth the riches within me will do me in over time. The second thing I hear implicit in this saying is the idea that as I consider courage, as I consider doing the next brave thing, I need not look far afield. I need not borrow a new personality or rely on a secondhand understanding. I don't need to sign up for that online certification. Because the second thing that I hear in this saying from the Gospel of Thomas is that what I need is already within me. What you need is within you. If you're going to claim your life, if you're going to find your joy, if you're going to speak your truth, it's going to be most powerfully through those authentic gifts of your life that you and only you have. We hear this same message echoed in ancient stories, like in the Jewish tradition when David goes up against Goliath and is encumbered with all of the armor and weapons that don't fit him, don't suit him, and he casts them off and picks up the slingshot and the smooth stones that he used all his life as a shepherd. Or in Hinduism, the villagers of Vrindavan preparing an elaborate sacrifice to Indra, god of rain, to secure good weather. But here comes Krishna to persuade them to stop all that elaborate ritual and instead turn back to the humble Gandharvan hill that actually sustains their cattle in life, meaning turning back from the rituals and the put-ons and instead back to what is already here in our own daily life. From ancient Japan, the story of Momotaro, the peach boy, tells the same story. Use what you have is within you, as do the trickster tales of the trickster hare in Eastern Africa. Throughout the world, throughout time, the wisdom passed down in these stories meant to guide the next generation are all singing the same song. You have what you need. And if you're going to do what life calls you to do, and if you're going to be what life calls you to be, it's got to be as the person who you actually are, with the gifts and resources you already have. which for me, at least, is a daunting message because it calls my bluff. Because I love the excuse of signing up for that online certification. If only, I just need. This wisdom tells me to stop stalling, reminds me that all that's between me and the next bold and fresh choice in my life is to summon my courage. Earlier, Karen Martin told the story of stone soup. And usually that story is told with the message of sharing, communities coming together and have more than they need. It's a great fundraising story. And I believe all of that's true. But this morning, I want to ask you to hear it differently. I want to ask you to understand yourself as the whole village, timid and stuck in its ways. And here comes some unexpected, uninvited, and unwelcome strangers. It could be an event or circumstances or even some person or some challenge or some adversity. Here it comes down the road. And perhaps your first instinct is to cower and hide behind the door. But little by little, something in you starts to loosen. Little by little, as you soothe yourself, you actually see that to meet this moment, whatever the new thing, whatever the thing in your life that's challenging you now, that you do have actually a carrot of competence. You've got an onion of gumption, that you've got some spices from the wisdom of your ancestors. In fact, you, the village, have all you need on reflection to meet this moment, turning fear into a feast. I'm saying all of this thus far as if the beneficiary might be only you, but we know that's not true. We know that in this perilous moment in society, in our history, there are strangers of unexpected and unwanted occurrence who've wandered into our purview: fear, mistrust, manipulation, cruelty. And maybe we've been wondering, what on earth can we do? If we take seriously that doing nothing is not an option, that leaving within what is within us untouched and unclaimed will, as the saying goes, destroy us. And if we take seriously that already we have all we need, then we can take the next step. Even trembling, we can make the next call. We can do that next brave thing that we've been putting off. And if we are creative and tenacious and loving and bold, and if we go together, nothing on earth, I think, will be able to stop all of that rolling and uprising, transforming power. Maybe like that poem from Jericho Brown this morning, you've arrived in your life now at a crossing, and maybe it's time. Maybe today it is time. And if you need inspiration, let me tell you a story. A few days ago, I heard that the administration was not going to recognize World AIDS Day across the federal government. So I said a few things. But I said, well, at UUCA, we're going to make darn sure that we're going to lift up and tell a story for World AIDS Day. So I want to share this story. When the AIDS crisis first hit San Francisco, the official response, as we know, was slow, confused, counterproductive, indifferent. In those early years, before there was effective treatments, before government funding, before the wider world or the president could even say the word AIDS without flinching, one group of people started quietly organizing in their own ways. And this was the leather community of San Francisco. They were the folks in black leather vests and chaps in clubs on Folsom Street, people who had already learned before the crisis how to build chosen family when their own families of origin wouldn't have them. They already knew how to watch each other's backs. They already knew how to organize events, raise money, and turn stigma into strength. And when their friends started getting sick, they didn't ask permission to act. Instead, leather bars quietly turned into information hubs. Where you once might have gone to only flirt or cruise, suddenly now there were flyers about safer sex, about symptoms to watch for, about who in the neighborhood needed a ride to the hospital. Fundraisers sprang up that looked like community itself. Leather contest nights became benefit nights. Auctions featured the things they knew and loved: gear, art, experiences. But now the proceeds went to pay for medications, hospice care, funeral costs, and the care, of course, was not only financial, financial. People in leather households and clubs made rotating schedules to sit by hospital beds when many families were too frightened or too ashamed to show up. They cleaned apartments when somebody was too weak to stand, to put on surgical gloves, and how to advocate with doctors. They did the unglamorous work of changing sheets and bathing bodies and calling partners and friends with bad news. And this community also did the holy work of remembering. When young people died, the leather community helped sew quilt panels for the AIDS memorial quilt. Some stood at microphones and candlelight ceremonies in full leather, reading names into the cold air. These stories are recorded in the Unsung Heroes Project, and what becomes clear as you listen is that none of these unsung heroes paused to ask, are we doing it right? Are we the right people? They simply brought forth from within them what they already had, their networks, their nightlife, their humor, their ritual, their fierce loyalty, their willingness to be seen as strange. They turned all of that, exactly who they were, into a beautiful, powerful lifeline. By the time the wider world finally began to catch up with funding and research and more compassionate coverage, this unlikely congregation in leather had already logged countless hours of bedside vigils, benefit nights, and funeral processions. They had already, in their way, become church for each other. So when we talk about a community pulling together out of its own rich and genuine self, its own language, its own culture, its own wild and particular gifts, you don't have to imagine something abstract. Instead, you can picture a community come together in leather on Folsom Street, standing together in the face of the plague, saying, we are exactly who we are, and from who we are, we will make care and courage, and we will make a way. And I'm talking about all of this not only today because I think there might be 1 or 2 or 6 dozen of you who've been holding back in your lives from doing the next brave thing, choosing progress now over comfort. And it might be that today, like Jericho Brown's poem, you're finally ready to leap. But I'm talking about all of this today because in my time here at UUCA, I see a possible risk. And that risk is that you might become comfortable with how far you've already come. And you might get complacent with who you've been now for some time. And if I'm hearing that saying from the Gospel of Thomas correctly, that failure to stay awake and keep digging deep, to keep risking, to keep finding new riches within and new moments to risk could curdle and corrode and quietly turn to dust. And so in my time with you, I'm hoping that you choose in the months and the years up ahead to be less like 95% of congregations these days, playing out familiar habits, and instead that you would be more like the leather community in San Francisco throughout the AIDS crisis, drawing powerfully on what you have, what you know, who you are, and how you love, to bring forth from yourselves and out into the world a fresh and prophetic expression of transforming love.